All right, imagine you're alive in 1904. You crack open a newspaper, see the words Russia versus Japan, and immediately go, oh, this is going to be quick. Russia's massive, ancient, stretches across half the planet, and Japan, at least on paper, is still the new kid trying to prove it belongs at the table.
Yeah, like one of those matchups where you already know the outcome, so you barely pay attention. Final boss versus the starter enemy with a wooden sword.
Exactly. Everyone assumed Russia would roll in, flex its size, and that would be the end of it. The largest standing army in Europe, endless manpower, a whole empire backing them.
And then history said, actually, no.
In our real timeline, Russia completely fumbles the bag. The war exposes how rotten the empire is on the inside, bad logistics, outdated thinking, leaders who underestimate their opponent at every turn.
Which is honestly worse than losing to a stronger enemy. Losing because you tripped over your own shoelaces is way more embarrassing.
And that embarrassment matters, because that loss doesn't just end a war, it lights the fuse on everything that comes after. The 1905 revolution, the weakening of the Tsar, and eventually the total collapse of the Romanov dynasty.
So basically, one L snowballs into communism, world wars, and the entire 20th century being absolute chaos.
Pretty much. But here's the thing about history. It's fragile. It hinges on boring, tiny details. A train arriving on time, a decision made a year earlier, one guy not dying when he historically does.
You're telling me the fate of millions comes down to admin errors?
I wish I was joking.
Oh, this already feels cursed.
So today we're pulling on one very specific thread. What if Russia doesn't collapse under pressure? What if the so-called Russian bear isn't a paper tiger?
What if it actually wakes up?
What if Russia wins the Russo-Japanese War cleanly, decisively, no mortal victories involved?
Like, not we survived, but we dominated.
Exactly. And so, what if that single victory quietly reshapes global politics?
I have a bad feeling about this.
Because when Russia wins here, it doesn't just change East Asia. It rewires alliances in Europe, stabilizes the Tsar's rule, sidelines revolutionary movements, and most importantly,
Don't say it.
it stops World War I from happening the way we know it.
Oh, wow, okay, that's not a small butterfly effect, that's a meteor.
And that's what we're unpacking today.
All right, I'm in, but I need emotional preparation.
Welcome to Solo Filler, the podcast where we break down wild ideas, alternate histories, and wait, that actually tracks scenarios in a way you can follow without feeling like you're back in school. I'm John.
And I'm Lily. I interrupt, panic, and translate this stuff into human language.
If you enjoy long-form conversational deep dives, go ahead and like, subscribe, or follow, whatever helps feed the algorithm gods.
They demand sacrifice.
Today's episode is all about a world where Russia doesn't stumble at the start of the 20th century and what that means for Japan, Europe, and the entire global order.
And spoiler alert, it all starts with the least exciting but most powerful force in warfare.
But wait, there's more.
No, don't say it.
Logistics.
Oh, yay. Trains.
Yep, and that's where Chapter 1 begins. Okay, let's slow this down, because when people hear Russian Empire, they picture this unstoppable juggernaut. Endless soldiers, endless land, endless resources.
Yeah, Russia in 1904 has that final boss aura, like the music changes when they enter the room.
Exactly. On paper, Russia should steamroll Japan. It controls 1/6 of the Earth's land surface. It has the largest standing army in Europe, and it's ruled by an autocrat who, in theory, can mobilize the entire country on a whim.
Keyword there being in theory.
Right, because size isn't the same thing as strength, and this is where the illusion starts cracking.
Paper tiger energy.
First problem, the Russian military is huge, but it's badly organized. Promotions are based more on loyalty and aristocratic status than competence. Officers are slow to adapt, terrified of making independent decisions, and allergic to modern warfare.
So it's like having a massive gaming clan where half the leaders don't know the controls.
That's generous. Many of them are still obsessed with 19th century ideas, mass infantry charges, rigid formations, and the belief that sheer bravery can overcome machine guns.
Oh no, the vibes over firepower doctrine.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Japan is studying recent conflicts like the Boer War and adapting fast. Russia? Not so much.
Okay, so leadership's bad, but they still have numbers, right?
They do, but those numbers are mostly trapped on the wrong side of the planet, which brings us to the second problem, geography.
Yes, Russia's favorite enemy.
The war is happening in Manchuria and Korea. Russia's population centers, factories, and training hubs are thousands of miles away in western Russia.
So everything has to go on a road trip through Siberia.
And Siberia is not forgiving. There's only one practical way to move troops and supplies efficiently: the Trans-Siberian Railway.
Which I'm guessing is not the masterpiece the brochures promised.
Not even close. In 1904, it's mostly single track, meaning trains can't easily pass each other. Traffic jams happen constantly.
So if one train messes up, everyone behind it is stuck.
Exactly, and worse than that, it's unfinished.
Still can't get over that part.
Around Lake Baikal, there's a massive gap. Trains literally stop. Soldiers have to disembark, march across frozen terrain in winter, and leave heavy artillery behind.
So Russia shows up late and under-equipped.
Weeks late, sometimes months. Meanwhile, Japan can move troops by sea in days.
That's not a war, that's a scheduling disaster.
Third problem, logistics beyond transport. Russia's supply system is inefficient and corrupt. Ammunition shipments go missing, food spoils, winter gear arrives after winter battles are already over.
So soldiers are freezing, hungry, and waiting on shells that may or may not exist.
Exactly. Morale collapses fast, and when morale collapses, discipline follows.
This is sounding less like an empire and more like a badly managed warehouse.
Fourth problem, command paralysis. Russian generals are obsessed with avoiding blame. They delay decisions, refuse to commit reserves, and constantly wait for approval from higher up.
Yes, corporate warfare.
Japan, by contrast, gives field commanders more autonomy. They move faster, exploit openings, and force Russia to react instead of plan.
So Russia's always on the back foot even though it's bigger.
Exactly, and all of this creates the illusion of strength without the reality. On paper, Russia is terrifying. In practice, it's brittle.
Big statue, cracked foundation.
And here's the most important part. This weakness isn't inevitable.
Oh?
It comes down to decisions, funding priorities, leadership choices, and whether anyone in power is willing to admit there's a problem before a war starts.
Let me guess, in our timeline, they don't.
They absolutely don't, which is why the empire collapses a decade later.
But in this alternate timeline...
Someone blinks first.
Uh-oh.
And the fix starts with the most boring sentence in military history.
I swear if you say logistics again.
Logistics, but actually finished this time.
Okay, yeah, I'm listening.
So now we hit the actual fork in the road. Because nothing we talked about in Chapter 1 is destiny. Russia isn't doomed, it's just badly managed.
So this is the moment where someone finally reads the warning label.
Exactly. And in this timeline, that someone is the Tsar actually listening to his own advisors.
Already unrealistic, but okay, alternate history rules.
Specifically, the warnings about the Trans-Siberian Railway. In our timeline, construction is slow, underfunded, and constantly delayed.
Because vibes-based infrastructure planning never works.
But here's the change. Starting around 1999, the Russian government treats the railway as a strategic weapon, not a prestige project.
That alone feels like a patch update.
Funding is prioritized, corruption is cracked down on, at least enough to keep materials from disappearing. And the most critical section, the loop around Lake Baikal, becomes priority number 1.
So no more everyone off the train, time to hike across frozen hell.
Exactly. By 1902, the Circumbaikal section is complete. Trains run continuously from western Russia to the Pacific coast.
Okay, explain this to me in gamer terms.
Sure, Russia unlocks fast travel.
Oh, that's huge.
In the real timeline, Russia can push maybe 3 or 4 military trains a day eastward. In this timeline, that jumps to over a dozen.
So reinforcements stop trickling in and start flooding in.
Exactly. Travel time drops from over a month to under 3 weeks. Artillery arrives on schedule. Ammunition stockpiles build up instead of running dry.
Which means commanders can actually plan instead of panic.
And that changes behavior immediately. Russian generals become more confident holding defensive positions because they know supplies are coming.
Confidence is underrated as a weapon.
Now add a second quiet change: training and doctrine.
Oh, a double buff?
In this timeline, Russia pays attention to recent wars. Lessons from conflicts like the Boer War aren't ignored.
So they finally accept that charging machine guns is a bad idea.
Exactly. Defensive warfare becomes the focus. Trenches, overlapping fields of fire, artillery coordination.
You're telling me they learned to dig.
They learn to dig very well, and crucially, they're supplied well enough to stay dug in.
That alone would ruin Japan's whole strategy.
It does. Japan's early victories historically rely on speed and aggression, forcing Russians to retreat before reinforcements arrive.
But now the reinforcements are already there.
Exactly. The war slows down, and that favors Russia.
So one finished railway flips the tempo of the entire conflict.
That's the core idea. Not better soldiers, not super weapons, just removing self-inflicted weaknesses.
Which is terrifying, honestly.
And we're not done yet, because even with perfect logistics on land, Russia still has a massive problem at sea.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Please tell me this is where the Admiral survives?
Funny you should say that, because Chapter 3 is all about the one man whose death doomed the real war.
Oh, hell yes. I'm ready.
All right, now we move to the part of the war where everything really should have gone Japan's way, the sea. Because Japan's entire strategy depends on naval dominance.
Right. Island nation logic. If you control the ocean, you control the war.
That's the idea. Japan needs the sea lanes to move troops, food, ammunition, everything into Korea and Manchuria. Lose that, and the army starves.
So naval control isn't a bonus objective, it's the main quest.
Spot on. And historically, Russia hands Japan that advantage almost immediately.
Because
Russia's Pacific Fleet is badly handled from day one. Poor readiness, cautious leadership, and then the single most catastrophic moment of the entire naval campaign.
Uh-oh, I know this one.
Admiral Stepan Makarov, the one Russian naval commander who actually understands modern naval warfare, dies barely weeks into the war.
Yep, flagship hits a mine, he goes down with it, and morale just evaporates.
You're right on the money. After his death, the fleet becomes timid, ships stay in harbor, initiative disappears. Japan gains freedom of movement almost overnight.
So Russia loses the ocean without even really fighting for it.
Pretty much. But in this timeline, that moment never happens.
Oh.
Because Makarov survives. Whether it's better mine awareness, different patrol patterns, or just dumb luck, the flagship doesn't hit the mine.
And suddenly, the whole naval campaign feels different.
It does, because Makarov is aggressive but not reckless. He understands he doesn't need to destroy the Japanese fleet outright.
He just needs to be annoying.
That's a good way to put it. He uses what's called a fleet in being strategy, keeping the Russian fleet active enough that Japan can't ignore it.
So, Japan's navy is constantly on edge.
Exactly. Instead of focusing purely on supporting land operations, Japanese ships are stuck patrolling, escorting, reacting.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. Crews wear down, maintenance schedules slip, fuel and ammunition burn faster than planned.
And that pressure adds up.
Now add one more change. When Japan launches its surprise attack on Port Arthur, it doesn't catch the Russians asleep.
Let me guess. Higher readiness?
You nailed it. Searchlights are active, shore batteries are manned, torpedo boats are spotted early.
So the Pearl Harbor before Pearl Harbor moment just fizzles.
Exactly. Japan still fights well, but it doesn't land that early psychological blow.
Which matters more than people think.
Absolutely. Confidence shapes decisions. And with Makarov alive, Russian captains are willing to sortie, probe, and contest the waters.
So when the big clash finally happens...
It happens on Russian terms.
Oh, damn.
At the Battle of the Yellow Sea, Makarov forces an engagement instead of retreating. Russian ships concentrate fire, maintain discipline, and exploit their heavier guns.
And this time, the command ship doesn't get lucky.
That's right. Japanese flagship Mikasa takes serious damage. Admiral Togo is forced to disengage.
That's huge.
It is, because Japan doesn't lose the war at sea, but it loses certainty.
And uncertainty is poison in logistics.
Well said. Supply convoys become cautious, timetables slip, and Japan's army on land starts feeling the squeeze.
So between the railway on land and the fleet at sea,
The pressure flips direction.
Japan's still strong, but now they're the ones racing the clock.
Exactly. And that's where Chapter 4 takes us, because once supply lines wobble, battles on land turn brutal.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Next up, Manchuria.
I already hate it.
All right, now we're on land, and this is where the war turns ugly fast. Because once logistics and naval pressure start squeezing Japan, every battle becomes a math problem.
And I'm guessing Japan does not like the numbers.
Not at all. In the real timeline, Japan wins by speed and sheer aggression, hit hard, accept horrific casualties, force Russia to retreat before reinforcements arrive.
The "we'll bleed now so we win later" strategy.
Exactly. And it works historically because Russia keeps pulling back, unsure, undersupplied, waiting for trains that arrive too late.
But not in this timeline.
Not here. This time, Russian forces arrive early, dig in properly, and stay put.
Oh no, trench enjoyers.
Very much so. Defensive lines around key rivers and rail hubs are reinforced with machine guns, overlapping artillery, and, most importantly, enough ammunition to keep firing.
That last part feels crucial.
It is. At battles like the Yalu River, Japanese assaults slam into prepared Russian positions.
Let me guess, this doesn't end quickly.
Not even close. Japanese infantry advance with discipline and courage, but Maxim guns don't care about bravery.
Yeah, machine guns are a hard counter to heroism.
Wave after wave is cut down. Artillery pounds staging areas. Attacks that would have broken Russian lines in our timeline stall completely.
So instead of clean breakthroughs, Japan gets attrition.
Exactly. And attrition is a game Japan can't afford to play.
Because smaller population, smaller economy, and borrowed money.
You're on point. Japan is financing the war through massive foreign loans, betting everything on a short conflict.
So every extra week hurts.
Every extra week bleeds cash, ammunition, and trained soldiers. Meanwhile, Russia's railway keeps feeding the front, 30,000 fresh troops a month.
That's a nightmare if you're on the other side.
By early 1905, the situation becomes grim for Japan. Units under strength, shell shortages become common, rations shrink.
So morale starts slipping.
Exactly. And morale matters when you're being asked to charge fortified positions.
Yeah, enthusiasm has limits.
Then comes the turning point. With Japanese forces exhausted, Russian command finally goes on the offensive.
Wait, Russia attacks?
They do. In March 1905, coordinated counterattacks push Japanese troops back toward Korea.
That must feel surreal.
It does. The Russian steamroller finally lives up to its name, not through brilliance, but through endurance.
Just grinding forward.
Exactly. Japan's army isn't destroyed, but it's spent.
And if your army's spent and your navy's stressed,
The end game approaches.
which means Chapter 5 is about the aftermath.
Yep, peace talks, political fallout, and consequences nobody fully expects.
Oh, good. My favorite part, unintended consequences.
Yeah, this is where it gets really weird. All right, this is where the shooting stops, but the damage really sets in. Because wars don't end when armies get tired. They end when money runs out.
And you already told me Japan is basically on a financial treadmill going way too fast.
That's putting it lightly. By mid-1905, Japan's economy is under brutal strain. The war was financed through high-interest loans from foreign banks, mostly British and American.
So every lost battle isn't just blood, it's dead.
Exactly. And once the naval situation turns uncertain and the army starts getting pushed back, investors panic.
Never trust investors not to fold at the worst possible moment.
Credit tightens, imports become harder to pay for, ammunition purchases slow. Japan can still fight, but it can't fight comfortably.
Which is a bad vibe when you're already bleeding men.
Right. So Japan sues for peace. And here's where this timeline really diverges.
Because the Treaty of Portsmouth goes from humiliating for Russia to oh no for Japan.
That's the shift. Russia comes to the table from a position of strength, not desperation, not damage control.
So what kind of terms are we talking?
Punitive ones. First, an indemnity. Japan is forced to pay Russia hundreds of millions of yen.
That's catastrophic.
It is. That money doesn't exist in a neat pile. It has to be extracted through taxes, currency manipulation, and austerity.
So the public pays.
Always.
What else?
Territory. Russia takes full control of Sakhalin Island and establishes dominance over Manchuria.
And Korea?
Russia turns Korea into a protectorate, keeping the emperor in place but stripping real sovereignty.
So Japan loses the very thing it went to war to secure.
Exactly, which shatters the myth of unstoppable Japanese modernization.
I can already feel the domestic fallout.
It's immediate. Economic shock triggers inflation. Food prices spike, urban unrest explodes.
This is worse than the real Hibiya riots, isn't it?
Much worse. Martial law follows. Civilian government credibility collapses.
So instead of becoming a rising imperial power, Japan slams into a wall.
That's the key takeaway. This moment becomes known as the Meiji Collapse.
That name alone sounds ominous.
Japan doesn't disappear, but it retreats inward. Modernization slows. Military expansion pauses. Isolation replaces ambition.
Which means the Pacific looks very different going forward.
It does. And meanwhile, back in St. Petersburg, the mood couldn't be more different.
Oh boy.
Because Chapter 6 is about what victory does to an empire that was supposed to fall apart.
Let me guess. Russia gets confident.
Dangerously so.
Okay, now we zoom out from the battlefield and look at what this victory does inside Russia itself. Because this is the part most people underestimate.
Yeah, wars don't just change borders. They mess with vibes, national vibes.
Exactly. In our real timeline, losing to Japan shatters the myth of the Tsar. It proves the system is broken. Confidence evaporates.
Which leads directly to strikes, riots, and hey, maybe this whole autocracy thing isn't working.
Right, but in this timeline, that humiliation never happens. Instead, Russia wins, and wins convincingly.
So the Tsar doesn't look like a clown.
He looks like a protector, a ruler who stood up to a modern power and didn't blink.
That alone changes everything.
It does. The unrest that fueled the 1905 revolution just fizzles. There's no Bloody Sunday moment that ignites mass outrage.
So the pressure valve never explodes.
Exactly. And that gives Nicholas II something he never had historically: breathing room.
Which is dangerous.
Very. But also stabilizing. From a position of strength, the Tsar makes limited reforms.
Let me guess, just enough to shut people up.
That's the idea. He creates a consultative assembly, a Duma, but keeps real power firmly in imperial hands.
So not democracy, just feedback.
Right. Enough representation to satisfy the middle class and peel them away from radical movements.
And the radicals?
They lose momentum. Without a humiliating defeat, revolutionary ideology struggles to gain traction.
So no mass appeal for guys yelling about overthrowing everything.
Exactly. Figures like Lenin remain fringe voices, arguing theory from exile rather than leading movements.
That's a massive divergence.
It is. And economically, the empire surges. War indemnities, access to Manchurian resources, and renewed investor confidence fuel rapid industrial growth.
So instead of collapsing, Russia levels up.
Pretty much. Railways expand, factories multiply, the state looks competent, for once.
That's unsettling.
It should be, because a stable autocracy is far more durable than a collapsing one.
So Russia doesn't reform because it's forced to, it reforms because it can afford to.
Well put. And that shifts the entire balance of power in Europe.
Uh-oh.
Because Chapter 7 is where the shockwaves hit everyone else.
Great. International consequences.
Yep, and they're not subtle.
I had a feeling about this.
Okay, now we leave Russia and Japan behind and look at the rest of the world collectively going, wait, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah, this is the part where every other empire starts nervously checking their group chats.
Exactly. Because a Russian victory in East Asia doesn't stay in East Asia. It completely scrambles expectations.
Especially for Britain, right?
Absolutely. Britain had spent the entire 19th century playing defense against Russian expansion. The whole great game was about keeping Russia away from India.
And now Russia just proved it can project power across an entire continent.
That's the nightmare scenario. A Russia with working railways, a competent military, and confidence.
So London panics.
Quietly, but yes. The idea of partnering with Russia, like in our timeline's Anglo-Russian Entente, suddenly feels dangerous.
Because you don't ally with someone who just leveled up.
Exactly. Instead of cooperation, relations cool. Suspicion replaces pragmatism.
And that leaves France in a really awkward spot.
It does. France is allied with Russia, but also trying to improve relations with Britain.
So now it's stuck between its two best friends who suddenly hate each other.
Right. The alliance system that held Europe together starts to wobble.
Which is usually when Germany smells opportunity.
You're reading ahead, but yes. Kaiser Wilhelm II sees a chance to reshape Europe.
Because he always wanted Russia looking east, not west.
Exactly. And now that Russia and Britain are estranged, Germany steps in and proposes a return to the old order.
The three emperors thing.
Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia. Three conservative monarchies with shared interests and shared fears.
Namely, liberalism, nationalism, and everything exploding.
Precisely. They strike a grand bargain. Russia backs Austria in the Balkans. Austria supports Russian ambitions at the Turkish Straits.
So everyone gets something except the small countries.
As usual. And this alliance fundamentally alters the crisis logic of Europe.
Which means when things go wrong,
They don't go wrong the same way.
uh-oh.
And that brings us to Sarajevo.
I hate that word.
All right, June 28th, 1914, Sarajevo. Same city, same day, same gunshots.
Which is wild because every history brain cell is screaming, this is where everything breaks.
Exactly. In our timeline, this assassination acts like a spark in a room filled with gas.
Austria panics, Russia mobilizes, Germany mobilizes harder, France jumps in, Britain follows, and suddenly everyone's ruined.
That chain reaction only works because of how alliances are wired.
And in this timeline, the wiring's different.
Very different. When Archduke Franz Ferdinand is assassinated, Austria-Hungary is furious, but it isn't isolated.
Because Russia isn't waiting on the sidelines sharpening a sword.
Right. Russia is Austria's ally.
That alone breaks the script.
Instead of mobilizing troops, Tsar Nicholas II calls for restraint, not out of kindness, but out of control.
Explain that.
Serbia is economically dependent on Russia in this timeline. Trade, loans, diplomatic protection, it all runs through St. Petersburg.
So Russia doesn't need tanks, it just needs leverage.
Exactly. Nicholas pressures the Serbian government to accept Austrian demands for an investigation.
Which is the thing they refused in our timeline.
Right. Here, refusal isn't an option. The Serbian leadership caves.
That's huge.
The Black Hand conspirators are rounded up. Trials are held, executions follow.
So Austria gets justice without invasion.
And more importantly, without triggering Russian mobilization.
Which means Germany doesn't feel boxed in.
Correct. Germany supports Austria diplomatically, not militarily. France watches nervously, but stays put. Britain exhales.
The dominoes just stop.
They do. There's outrage, there's humiliation. Serbia loses face, but it survives as a state.
And Europe doesn't fall into a trench-filled nightmare.
Exactly. No Schlieffen Plan, no invasion of Belgium, no total war.
That's insane.
What we get instead is an era of tense diplomacy, summits, ultimatums, power politics without apocalypse.
So the old world doesn't die screaming.
It limps forward. Empires remain intact: Romanovs, Habsburgs, Hohenzollerns.
No mass slaughter means no radicalization on that scale.
Exactly. No lost generation, no Bolshevik takeover, no fascist backlash.
So the 20th century is quieter,
More stable, more conservative, possibly more stagnant.
which is honestly kind of terrifying in a different way.
And that's the final question this timeline leaves us with.
Let me guess. Was this actually better?
That's where we end.
Cool. Existential dread, my favorite.
And that brings us to the conclusion.
All right, quick reset, because we just covered a century's worth of consequences.
Yeah. If anyone zoned out for 5 minutes, history just took a completely different path.
So, let's rewind. This whole timeline starts with Russia fixing its biggest self-inflicted wound:
The train.
the train. The Trans-Siberian Railway actually gets finished, logistics stops sabotaging the army, and suddenly Russia can fight the war it was supposed to fight.
Which means Japan doesn't get to speed-run victories anymore.
Right. On land, Russia digs in, absorbs the blows, and turns Japan's aggressive strategy into a war of attrition.
Which Japan absolutely cannot afford.
At sea, Admiral Makarov survives, keeps the Russian fleet active, and denies Japan uncontested naval dominance.
So Japan's supply lines start sweating.
By 1905, Japan is exhausted, broke, and out of options.
Cue the worst peace deal imaginable.
Russia wins decisively. Japan pays indemnities, loses influence, and enters a period of internal collapse instead of imperial expansion.
Meanwhile, Russia gets the exact opposite arc.
Victory stabilizes the Tsar. Revolution fizzles. Limited reforms happen from a position of strength instead of desperation.
And that alone nukes the usual 20th century storyline.
With a confident Russia, European alliances reshuffle. Britain pulls back, Germany and Russia grow closer.
Which means when Sarajevo happens,
The world doesn't explode.
no world war, no trenches, no mass radicalization.
Just a slower, more controlled, and arguably more suffocating global order.
Okay, now I'm ready to emotionally process this.
Good, because now we can actually ask what this world means.
So here's the uncomfortable part of this timeline. It doesn't give us a clean moral victory.
Yeah, nobody's cheering, nobody's liberated, everything just keeps going.
Russia winning the Russo-Japanese War doesn't create a better world. It creates a more stable one.
And stability sounds great until you realize that also means the system never gets challenged.
Empires don't collapse, monarchies don't fall. The old order survives because it's never pushed to its breaking point.
So there's no massive trauma, but also no massive change.
Without a world war, you don't get the conditions that fuel revolutions or radical ideologies on a global scale.
Which means no communism taking over half the planet.
But also no rapid expansion of democracy, labor rights, or social reform.
Progress slows to a crawl.
Power stays concentrated. Change happens cautiously from the top down when it happens at all.
So the world is calmer, but heavier.
A 20th century ruled by emperors, diplomats, and quiet deals instead of mass movements and revolutions.
Less chaos, less blood, more control.
And all of it traces back to two small divergences: a railway finished on time and an admiral who lived long enough to matter.
Which is honestly terrifying.
Because it shows how little it takes to change everything.
So the real question isn't whether this world avoided disaster.
It's whether avoiding disaster without transformation is actually a victory at all.
All right, that's where we're going to leave it.
No explosions, no victory parade, just a world that quietly went in a very different direction.
If you stuck with us through all of that, we appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out and letting us spiral through alternate history for a bit.
This has been Solo Filler, where we break down big ideas in a way you can just follow along.
If you enjoyed this one, do the usual algorithm-friendly things.
And we'll be back next time with another story where one small change rewrites everything.
See you then.
未来描きたい